Right, officially we begin. Welcome everybody. This is the first of 9 different webinars that we're having this week. And it all started a few months back when we realized that Cannes would not happen this year. It would not happen in June, and they hoped to hold it in September, but it was clear that wouldn't happen either. And I think many of us in the industry just thought, you know, that was a big shame, even though we totally understood the reason. So we tried to think, what could we do? And we began to ask around the kind of people that you hoped you would see at Cannes, whether they would join us and talk to us. And I'm absolutely thrilled to say that everybody that we asked has said yes. Nobody is charging for anything. It's all done free. We're doing it for free as part of the spirit of COVID-19 collaboration. And throughout the whole pandemic, we found an amazing willingness of people to help each other and support each other in the industry, outside the industry. And so thank you to everybody who's worked with us to do that. Thank you to my team who've worked night and day to figure out things we didn't know how to do.
Paul, can you hear Julian?
No, Julian's frozen. Steph, do you just want to take over and do the introduction?
Hi, yes. So I'm just going to carry on from what Julian was saying. When he hopefully unfreezes very soon, I'm sure he would like to carry on a bit. But just to wrap up what Julian was saying about the Indie Forum Digital, we've been really overwhelmed by, you know, the willingness of people to collaborate with us, to come on and do these webinars. And you guys as well, you know, signing up, being there, it's been really amazing. So I'm just going to get started introducing myself. I'm Stephanie Fox. I'm from the Network One, and I'm going to be moderating this webinar. So I'm just going to go through some basic housekeeping before we get started. So we're going to have a 5-minute intro now. We'll then hand over to our speakers for a 35-minute presentation, 15-minute Q&A, and we'll finish by 5 to the hour so you can be ready for your next virtual appointment. Please do keep your microphones muted at all times. We'll unmute your microphone if we're calling on you to ask a question. But that being said, do keep your videos on so that our speakers have some friendly faces to present to. We'll have a quick Q&A portion right at the end. But if you have any questions in the meantime while our speakers are talking, you can just send them directly to me in the chat. So to do this, go to your chat box, and where it says to, you should see a drop-down menu. So instead of everyone, select Stephanie Fox. We'll go through all of these questions, and we'll select a few to ask our speakers once they've finished speaking. So all of the questions should be sent directly to me. If you would like to ask the question yourself, just type "I'll ask" in brackets next to your question, and I'll then call on you to ask during the Q&A. If you prefer for me to ask a question for you, just say so in the same way. You should hopefully have your Zoom viewing mode set to speaker view. If not, just click speaker view at the top right of your screen. Our speakers will be sharing slides on their screen, so if you can't see their speaker window when their slides are on the screen, select Show Active Speaker Video. For any technical issues, just message my colleague Lizzie Gold either in the chat, or you can email Lizzie at lizzie.gold@thenetwork1.com. We're going to be recording this webinar, so if you prefer not to take notes, don't worry about it. And if the system crashes, hopefully it won't, but you never know, just wait a couple of minutes and log back in using the same link that you already used to log in this afternoon. Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce our wonderful speakers. Matthias Wikström and Johan Phil are the creative brains behind Doconomy's Grand Prix winning campaign in 2019 and former directors of RBK. Additionally, they've developed and launched purpose-driven innovation projects together, such as the Natalia Project for civil rights defenders and Baltic Sea Project for Bank of Ireland. Matthias Wikström is a Swedish-based renowned international creative strategist. Prior to founding Doconomy and RBK Communication, He was the creative director at Havas Sweden and CEO at A3. He's won multiple industry awards, served on several juries, and is a high-scoring speaker at industry summits in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, as well as in the UN and UNFCCC. Johan is a creative director with more than years of experience working in the advertising industry, more than 25 years in fact. In 2014, Johan shifted focus from large advertising networks to purpose-driven service design and product development. Johan has received over 100 industry awards, including 3 Cannes Lion Grand Prix and 3 Eurobest Grand Prix awards. Johan has extensive jury experience and is an experienced keynote speaker at major industry events and festivals. Today, they'll be talking to us about how they won their Grand Prix, how to work with clients, and the value of long-term strategy and planning. I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing from them, so I will now turn over to Matthias and Johan.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I hope everyone can hear us. Otherwise, you get to wave or point your ears or do anything erratic, and we will know. Very pleased to be able to be here today. Although, of course, our main concern is for everyone to be safe and to keep the curve flat. I think we are all suffering from this spring's challenges, but. As a company and as a team, we've had the opportunity to be quite okay, actually, and the people we work with has also been healthy. So we're very grateful for that. As with this opportunity to present how we work and a little bit of what we've done. So I'm Matthias, and I've been working with Johan for about 25 years.
It's more than 25 years. We said 25 years 3 years ago. Yeah.
It makes us look younger.
It makes us old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I started working, I started working with Johan, and it's been like 5 years now. So now we're going to walk you through a little bit how we do things and what we've done recently. I also think it's interesting out of an advertising perspective, as we've both been running agencies and working in the large international networks, so we've seen both sides of the coin, as well as now that we have recently stepped over the fence to start working on the client side. Me as a CEO of Economy, and
my current title is Head of Innovation, which is basically trying to run the innovation processes of coming up with new products and services at the Economy.
So that's a little bit about us, but let's jump into, we have a deck with a few slides. I think we said it was...
And we have 35 minutes.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's start. That should be full screen, yeah? Works well. Great. Love this question. It's very difficult to answer this question. We'll try to explain how we work and the different processes that we have at the Economy, which is actually, trying to explain our approach to innovation altogether.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we all agree that if you try to win something, you're likely not going to. So this is more of a background on how we've been working, and in average, the last 3 years, we won 3 Grand Prix.
Yes.
So I mean,
we're doing something right.
We're doing something right, but we're not really sure what. But maybe we can have that in the Q&As afterwards.
Good.
So just for a brief disclaimer prior to kicking this off, we suck at advertising. We did that for the first 10 years. And then we realized that it's not really our strong side, although we have great respect for the skills and the people out there doing traditional advertising in a really good way. But we haven't been doing it for almost 10 years.
No, so we stopped doing traditional advertising about 10 years ago. And focus more on innovation work, product development, and service design. which makes this slightly different because, I mean, like Matthias said, we are big fans of all the great work coming out from the big brands and the great agencies, but we are certainly not doing that at all.
So it all started, I had my first child, my daughter, and I was, as you do, you're sleepless, you know, because of many reasons with the baby. And I was spending the night on the sofa thinking, you know, what should I do as a parent, and where is my life going, in what direction, and so forth.
And you sucked at advertising.
And I sucked at advertising. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I realized that in order to gain a better sense of, you know, idea of where the business side was going, I decided to do an MBA at the Stockholm School of Economics with a focus on leading innovation.
And for me, that was very inspiring because I felt that Matthias completely changed his perspective on things, being more involved with business modeling, looking at strategy and so on. And I was very inspired by that. So I signed up for the Berlin School of Creative Leadership, which is also an MBA. And I think somehow during those years, we kind of connected even more on what we considered to be our next step in our careers, which absolutely meant stepping away from traditional advertising.
Yeah. So as you can see, I mean, we were in the business prior to 2011, but the recognition out of an awards perspective wasn't as grand as it has been in recent years. And we started working with Natalia project, as Stephanie said, working for a client called Civil Rights Defenders. And that's when we started developing our approach and model around purpose-driven innovation and trying to connect creativity to a business model in order for the business model to protect the creative idea. And well, since then the rest is history, sort of. Well, it is history, actually, but it's also what this timeline indicates is that it takes about 2 years for us to do our projects from start to finish. And it's not really a quick fix. It's a lot of energy and a lot of collaboration with different stakeholders that goes into this. Our main driver has always been to stand on the shoulders of giants in order to get things done. You know, there is a lot of great people out there working in big organizations, and we've been lucky enough to find them and to work with them in most of these projects.
And also one could add that these projects address very big problems, you know, very big challenges. And there's a reason for that. We felt that the connection between purpose and you know, the challenges that we face, you know, on a bigger scale, the SDGs, that's a very important ingredient in mobilizing the necessary resources and to actually achieve innovation in the first place.
So one can say that we sort of stopped selling stuff and started solving stuff instead. And what was interesting out of that perspective is that when we had our first run at the awards with the Natalia project, a lot of people were saying like, yeah, but it's easy, you know, it's an NGO and it always starts at a higher level of acceptance and everyone wants to be nice. So we were thinking, okay, let's try something else on. And then we took a bank, which is the most commercial side of the scale, and worked with them to develop the Baltic Sea project. And that, according to the same model, and that went pretty well as well.
And Humanium is really a business model innovation where brands can use the metal that's left over from weapon destruction programs, which then becomes a very strong symbol for the consumer showing engagement, but obviously also a clear donation or support for the work being done in these countries. So that, I think that both the Baltic Sea project and Humanium was very much about a business model innovation.
Yeah, plus Humanium is, the creativity in Humanium is basically giving the creative control away, enabling others to make use of their creativity using the metal.
So in our latest work, the Do Black project was awarded the Grand Prix in e-commerce, which is very important to us because since we're aiming for greater responsibility and transparency in consumption, it's a perfect award for us to receive. It's based on a very specific patent controlling the transaction based on the value of emissions connected to consumption instead of the monetary funds on your account. Yeah. So this is basically, in order to answer this question, we could only give you the background on how we work, and you guys might see that there's something, there's some value to our approach that could be part of this success. We think this is absolutely true. Innovation is such a buzzword, so it's sometimes hard to discuss it without feeling a bit, old almost. But I would say that innovation for us is really about a mindset, and I think that people from advertising and communications, background has a really, really good, advantage in understanding consumers and consumer behavior. But at the same time, they need to step away from the creative ego, because it's really about spending a lot of time with other people, coming in with other perspectives, challenging your idea, sticking to exploring the unknown for extensive times. So I think that on the one hand, a lot of people tend to talk about innovation, but very few actually are willing to do the work.
I think also coming from advertising and working in the industry for so many years, we have the capability to both illustrate the end target, the end game. This is the future state of where we're aiming to go, and also formulate the narrative of the story leading up to that end state. So I think anyone in advertising who's been working for some time with clients in that way is really a change maker in the making, so to say. It only depends on how we direct our talents, if we want to direct it to making ads or if we want to solve problems.
Yeah, and this is about staying away from the expert perspective. When you work for 25 years in an industry, you tend to become an expert, and that could actually be that could be a problem when working with innovation. Right. So if you look at the traditional, typical model of innovation, this one is from IDEO, I think. What we tend to do is that we introduce purpose in this model, and we think that's super important. I mean, innovation in itself will not, necessarily be about world improving ideas. And we kind of use purpose to find a way to work with clients and stakeholders where they feel connected, in a bigger picture. It's not all about increasing sales or market shares, but it's actually about looking at the world and having a clear focus on how to address challenges and solve problems.
And in regard to problems, I think that there is a lot of them out there. And if you are living your life as a corporate citizen, or as an individual for that matter, without looking at the world through a lens or like a purpose perspective on your lifestyle choices or on your corporate strategy, then I think it becomes much harder to navigate, it becomes much harder to be consistent, and it becomes by far much harder to be relevant to many people, I would say.
Right, so if you look at our basic checklist on how we determine that we're on the right track when working with innovation, this is basically it. So it's meant to be very simple and straightforward, but it's obviously each section or each layer creates a set of challenges in understanding exactly whether you are aligning the concepts or the initial ideas with the long-term strategy of the client. There's a lot of work behind this, but these are the basic checkbox things that we do to determine potential.
Obviously, there is a lot of challenges out there, and to help us understand that, the Sustainable Development Goals forms a magnificent map to navigate around. And we tend to always connect our ideas and ambitions to 3 or more of the SDGs in order to define relevance, but also to map out potential stakeholders and collaborators that we would like to work with.
I think this, it's nothing new, but for us, when we saw this the first time, it's funny because it's actually the overall design is made by Swede. So we saw this very, very early stage. But this is, how our industry can become relevant again. Helping clients to navigate and connect to SDGs. It's basically the best pitch ever, And it's also the breeding ground for innovation, because each of these represents such a big challenge. So innovation is certainly the only way to go. We also talk about the sense of mutual purpose, and it's the way you kind of go about in finding that mutual purpose that becomes important to more than all stakeholders involved. There's in a way it's difficult to do, but on the good thing about it, when you actually find that connection, there's a lot of energy and it's easy to mobilize the necessary resources that you need to pursue an idea for over 2 years.
Yeah, it takes we're not sure, but it takes either stupidity or stamina. I think potentially both,
Yeah.
But
Stamina, I usually.
You did the stamina, I did the stupidity bit. So it is long term. It's projects that takes a lot of time. There's a lot of disappointments. There's a lot of challenges, and
high risk. Yeah. It's high risk in the end, because we talk about 2 years. If you pour in resources in a project for 2 years, the risk, the sense that you could fail becomes pretty scary.
Bigger and bigger the closer you get to the launch.
Yeah. Right. So this is something you all know, and the reason why we're mentioning this is a very basic observation on the fact that some commercial players will not innovate because they simply don't have to. Usually when you have great resources and a small problem, there's no real reason to pursue innovation. But if you flip that and look at the challenges of the SDGs, it's most likely this. You have a huge problem and small resources, and that becomes the breeding ground for innovation, according to us. And if you look at the problem we're facing now, being climate change, I would say it's enormous. This problem is coming at us from a multitude of perspectives, and it's affecting us in every part of our lives. So this is what we're focusing on now, and it's certainly where we need the most innovation.
So that brought us to the economy and the economy journey, and what we are really about to talk about today as a case. The economy we founded about almost 2 years ago. Not really 2 years ago, but almost 2 years ago, as a reaction to the unsustainable consumption and the need to better understand and connect your lifestyle choices through your purchases to its impact on the planet. And as you know, we contribute to getting consumption easier, faster, less friction. You get same-day delivery. You get 3 months credit line, and everything is just about selling more at the expense of no one. You could see it could seem, but And it would be okay to a certain extent if we all could spend only what we had earned, but with the financial services and the banking industry enabling you to spend more and more without necessarily having more to spend, that drives for an even greater negative impact on the planet.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think the climate of speeding up consumption is where we decided to start the economy. It's I mean, it's obvious that it's not sustainable, but it's also against the overall responsibility of both producers and consumers. So for us, the economy is a service where we aim to slow down consumption in a way and make it more responsible and transparent.
And I think we all know and agree that the climate crisis is the greatest challenge, not only for our generation, but for generations to come. The greatest part with that is that we've all been part in screwing this planet up. So we also, most of us understand that we all need to be part in making it good again. So what we are most afraid of is time and measurability, of course.
And I mean, this is one of the first most important insights in when we decided to start the economy. It's a clear connection between individuals, their impact and their consumption patterns, And honestly, when we started this, there wasn't that much research on this, but as we'll show you later, it's it's over 70%. That's linked to your individual carbon footprint that comes from your consumption, which means that if that's true, obviously, if you could reach consumers and make them more aware of their impact, you could change things. And this is the idea behind the economy.
Yeah. So the bottom line is it's time to connect our consumption and our lifestyle choices to its impact on the planet. It's time for us to do what you do in traditional financial analysis, which is follow the money. Don't listen to what people are saying or what corporates are saying, but look at what they're spending in, what they're investing in. And that it would give you a pretty good idea of the ambitions of that individual or a corporate. So it's very important to connect. I think we can all agree that the IPCC report published a year and a half ago asking to reduce CO2 emissions by 50% by 2030 is quite aggressive as a statement, but as a year-on-year change, it's under 10%. I think it's like 7.8%. The dilemma is that most of the people don't understand that the main part of their carbon footprint is connected to their consumption. Other parts such as mobility, energy and investments are something that might be harder to do something about. So our full effort is to help consumers understand, connect their negative impact by consumption to the planet, but also to assist them in balancing the score, not leaving them with a problem, not pointing fingers saying, you're bad, you're screwing this up, but also helping them to balance the score by carbon offsetting or investing for positive impact.
Right, so our product that we're launching here in Sweden is a credit card that measures each transaction with an impact measured in kilo CO2, which gives you a total per month, which is the starting point for change, the way we see it, change of behavior. And it's very much like getting on the scale when you want to lose weight. We have been very careful about, like Matthias mentioned, to have any sense of guilt or we're not going to stop you from consuming, but we'll give you the information you need to start changing your behavior over time. So that's important. I mean, for us, it's really about, the sense of a scale is such an important part of having, engagement over time.
And this is also a good example talking about collaboration. It's the first time that the United Nations has put their name on a credit card. And what we've done, what I am actually the most proud of in this case is that we've been able to connect one end of the room, which is the specialists in international relations, with the specialists in secure transactions, and putting them on the same card, but in two different corners, with both of them understanding that both need to step up to this challenge in order to drive sustainable change.
So obviously the card is connected to an app, and the app will give you an idea of your impact based on different categories, and that's also important. Obviously, we all know that flying, which we don't do anymore, is high impact, but depending on who you are and what type of lifestyle you have, we will give you more and more information about how you could reduce your impact over time. And it's very important. I don't know if you noticed this, but the look and design is really about staying away from the typical emotional type of design that you would see when it comes to saving the planet or Greenpeace. This is really about a modern service. It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with people that are fully aware that they need to do something about this problem, and we want to give them a tool without any political or we want to stay away from guilt or morals in a way.
And it's also important that growing up, anything that was good for the planet or good for you was always a little less sweet, a little bit more uncomfortable, a little bit, this is not really as sexy as it could be. We want to challenge the problem and bring it, take it on full on really, and compete with all the factors that they're using to compete. If you're looking at traditional neobanks like Monzo or Revolut or N26 or any one of those, they're trying to stay ahead of the game with their design, and so are we, of course. I mean, we're not, just because it's good for you doesn't mean it has to look like crap. So this is a bit of a timeline from the last year almost. We started with teaming up with the UNFCCC when they understood our narrative and where we were going. And we set up the carbon limit prototype for Do Black, extended our partnership with MasterCard, and also entered into an agreement with Standard & Poor around sustainability and data. We launched the white card, and we're now looking to launch the black card.
One could mention that we invested a lot of time in partnerships. I think the first 6 months was only about securing partnerships, and I think that was a very wise investment, because the fact that they, like Matthias mentioned, that they are willing to put their logo on our credit card is it's an achievement. It's the first time the UN puts their logo on a credit card. And it's important because those are the two perspectives that we want to come together.
We're working in accordance. This is pretty similar to the United Nations principles on carbon change. We want to enable people to track and measure their CO2 emissions in order to understand better and to make smarter choices that will reduce the negative impact. And of course, there will be parts that you can't avoid, and for those, we also offer the ability to offset for your footprint. But it's not an carbon offsetting platform. I think it's a dangerous way to go. If you're trying, you can outsource the problem and just reap the benefits. But we're doing that as an educational tool for people to understand that every action has a reaction.
So, like we mentioned before, this is the product that we're launching in Sweden, our pilot market. So the white card is out and will be rolled out with marketing campaigns and so on in September. This is the core functionality, as mentioned before. It's giving consumers the information that they need to be more conscious. We are not stopping them in any way from consuming. It's obviously what we do with the Do Black card, but the white card has no limit in terms of won't stop you from going, to New York back and forth.
But the difference is when you come to the Do Black card, what we've done then is, I think this is a pretty good example on our ambition to hijack existing platforms and turning them working into the advantage of the planet. So Do Black is the first card that comes with the Do Black carbon emissions limit. And that limit, as Johan said, is a patent that we've filed to enable cards to cap something else than just your credit limit. So basically, we're taking the language and the functionality of traditional credit cards and converting it to something that becomes more of a positive instrument for the planet.
And this is the project that was awarded a Grand Prix last year in Cannes. I think we're watching the case film. So here's the case film. No?
No, it's another slide. Here's the case film.
You ready?
Popcorn.
In 2018, the United Nations released an urgent report emphasizing the need to cut carbon emissions in half by 2030 in order to avoid an irreversible climate crisis. The average consumer in Sweden causes around 10 tons of carbon emissions each year, of which 60% is linked to consumption. This spring, the economy took its fight against climate change one step further by adding a premium credit card to its offer. But instead of introducing a premium credit card with the typical benefits that encourages further mass consumption, the economy did the opposite by launching Do Black, the world's first credit card with a carbon limit. Simply put, it's the first credit card ever to stop you from overspending. Not based on your available funds, but rather on the levels of CO2 emissions caused by your consumption. Do Black helps you track your climate impact and ensures that you reduce it by 50% in line with the UN 2030 recommendation.
The core purpose of Do Black is not only the ability to measure the impact of your consumption, but also bringing it to a direct halt, making it a radical tool against climate change.
For years, credit cards have put a limit on our credit. Do Black puts a limit on our impact. The launch generated thousands of registrations and global media coverage, but more importantly, triggered the conversation around the impact of consumption. The introduction of Do Black was a wake-up call to commercial and financial industries alike, and generated an overwhelming interest and willingness to enter an era of greater responsibility. It would seem that putting a carbon impact limit on consumption isn't such a radical concept after all.
I think out of a CAN perspective, it's also important to note that we've been using CAN as a platform to distribute these ideas in order to find new partnerships. And after the Grand Prix, we had brands like Visa, Amazon, IBM reaching out. So it's great to compete. It's fun. It's good fun. It's great. And if you're rewarded, it's even more fun, of course. But we're doing it as a distributor of ideas to find new partnerships. And that has been the way forward for Humanium. It's been the way forward for the Baltic Sea project and for Natalia project. All of these projects has benefited greatly from having the exposure that Can Lions brings.
So just a short recap. Like we mentioned before, it's all about understanding the carbon footprint of individuals, and it's estimated that 60% can be linked, at least in Sweden, to an individual. Whereas I think the Canadians now did research and it's well over 70%. So
it depends primarily on your source of energy, if it's renewable or if you're living in a fossil powered society. But we also know that there is another tool that we could use as a vehicle to drive change. And there is almost 11 billion credit cards in circulation in the world. And we know that there is a tremendous amount of transactions. And if we could make those transactions speak in a language to protect the planet and educate people, then we would convert the credit cards from tools for consumptions to textbooks for insights, which we think is a crucial function in driving change.
Because I mean, a lot of people really didn't understand that. How can you focus on a credit card when you're supposed to save the planet? And we picked this vehicle, you know, intentionally, just because it's the best starting point to understanding, you know, the impact of consumption. And these numbers are staggering. And what's even more is that they're 10 times the global spending on military, which obviously is an indication of the power of you know, redirecting this into something that becomes more transparent and responsible.
So it's consumers to the rescue, really. We just need to educate the consumers around how they can rescue what needs to be saved.
And the credit card can become your, you know, the biggest symbol of your commitment. That's our belief.
But how do you measure this? How do you measure your impact on consumption? Well, the way it works, using the Dollar Index, we connect the credit card to the mobile phone application, where there is a calculation metrics based on the methodology of aggregating CO2 emissions per category code issued by the credit cards, and they share the same category codes as they correspond with the IRS in the US codes for line of business. And then we present that in an automated fashion. And all is, of course, vetted by Ernst & Young in order for them to say that we got clean underwear.
So this is what we want people to do over time. We feel that it's very important to have individuals on board in understanding that they need to reduce their impact by half. And this is different from country to country. We have an average of 11 tons per capita.
And it's also about helping them realize the required cuts. And the required cuts, if aggregated, looks like a massive wall. But if we can, you know, work on this year on year, I think we can all agree that the first 2 or 3 years are not going to be that tough, easy things to trade off. But then it's getting harder and harder. It's not as much about what we need to stop doing, but what we need to start doing. Coming back to our amazing partners,
yeah,
too.
Absolutely. I mean, that, you know, these are the ones leading the way. The fact that they are now, you know, partnering with us is a clear indication that, you know, MasterCard sees a very big future in addressing responsible consumption, and the UN are moving towards working closely with commercial partners. And this project has now also attracted more than 100 banks that we're currently in dialogue with, where we offer the Åland Index solution, which is the calculation model. So we are definitely offering this technology for more banks to become responsible and transparent. And this is just really highlighting the fact that once you need to measure in order to set limits. So we started off this project with finding a way to measure the impact of consumption. And because we're doing that, we could obviously introduce limits. So by this, we think we're going to change the banking system forever. We're going to shift banking to become a transparent and more responsible partner to consumers.
And that whole idea and that whole vehicle for change being the credit card and the limit obviously communicates in its own terms.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you so much.
1 minute over.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. We've had a couple of questions from the audience. So someone has asked, just a quick one, can a black card holder override the denied transaction?
No, it freezes up until your next batch of CO2 emissions is released on a monthly level.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So, You always get that. What if I'm stuck in the mountains with my car and I need to fill it up? Hey, you know.
Fair enough. So someone else has asked, do you think that there are lessons from doconomy that could benefit other big issues today, such as racial equality or health and well-being?
That's an excellent question. I think that for us, finding or creating tools that increases awareness is really the starting point for any change whatsoever. And I think that's what everyone should aim for if they want to change or address a problem. That don't look for the solutions necessarily, but look for ways for people to become aware. I think that's the big, insight we have with economy, because what we saw when we started economy was that everyone was, pointing fingers, and no one was actually creating a platform for awareness. So I would say that's the most important part.
And also stripping the problem to the bone, spending more time with the problem and making it understandable, relatable, and tangible, and not distant and on the news, and but making it part of your everyday life. And I think for those examples you mentioned, I think they are extremely relevant to that. It comes down to how we interact as people, and what kind of responsibilities that we.
And you have to trust people. I mean, most people want to change their behavior. They want to do good. So I would say find tools instead of telling them what to do or blaming people.
Yeah, it all comes down to old religious mantras, like teach a man how to fish and all that. I think that's what we're trying to do. Provide fishing rods for the world.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Thank you. Had another question. Someone said, have you ever walked away from a client opportunity because they're just interested in purpose washing? So, as in just wanting to be seen to be doing good for the wrong reasons?
Yes.
Every day. I know, but very, very often, I think, because I think one of the key benefits working with innovation is that, like you mentioned, it's extremely requiring, in terms of resources and time, and also to the extent of funding. So it's very unlikely that anyone with short-term gains would be interested in doing that. So in a way, you could avoid that type of greenwashing dilemma by introducing innovation processes, because they simply don't allow for ideas like that to.
No, and some of the time, depending on how you frame the question, it's people wanting to get away easy, but it's not always that it's deliberate, that they want to do a purpose washing or a green washing. They want to reap the benefits very fast. It doesn't necessarily all the time have to do with them being shady or wanting to cut the corners. So most of the time it's just lack of knowledge. Most of the people really, if you're asking someone, do you want your company to do good or to bad? Say, well, I would rather for it to do good. Okay, but then you need to change a few things, and that's like
you need to sacrifice.
Yeah,
that's the problem. It's about sacrifice. Something's gonna cost you, and that's whoever stays in the room after you've talked about that or not, that's the way we do it. We filter out the type of clients that are not stepping up to the challenge.
Absolutely. So you've got to kind of walk the walk as well as talk the talk. You can't just say one thing and then do another behind closed doors. Yeah, completely. All right, that was really fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm just going to quickly put you on mute now to wrap up. So unfortunately, we've run out of time for questions, but I'm going to share their details in case you have any other questions that you would like to ask. So you should be able to see Matthias and Johan's LinkedIn details there, and you can also find them on their website, which is www.doconomy.com. So again, I'd like to give a really big thank you to Matthias Wikström and Johan Peel for that great webinar. If you didn't have time to ask your question, again, just talk to them on those platforms. Yes, and you can also send something to us if you have a more specific question, and we can pass it on to them. Thank you everyone for coming. We really hope you enjoyed it. We'll be hosting the Indie Forum digital webinars every day this week, and our next one is in just 1 hour. So at 3 o'clock London time, we will be joined by awards consultant Alex Watson. Alex began her creative agency career at Saatchi & Saatchi London, where she was asked by David Droga, her first executive creative director, to take on managing the awards entries for Saatchi London's. Saatchi became Agency of the Year at Cannes Lions in 2002, and Alex went on to manage the creative award programs for Ogilvy, Sapient Nitro, and Shell. For the last 10 years, she has run her own consultancy, helping a few independents in the same way she helped the networks. Her presentation will focus on the key knowledge and techniques you'll need to maximize your chances of success. There's still time to register for We Want to Win at 3 p.m. London time. So just visit www.thenetwork1.com/the-indie-forum-digital for our full schedule and to sign up. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a really great day.